I heard that. That's all right.
It's more than a rounding.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 19th Selectmen's Meeting. I'll ask Selectman Bennett to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of February 5th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Are there any edits or alterations to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. At this time, we offer the opportunity for citizens to bring up new public business, that is, business that's not on the agenda for the evening. Is there anything to be brought up under new public business? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. The board has received an application from an event coordinator, David Benson, for a road race, Reason to Run, to benefit Dana-Farber on Sunday, April 28th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., beginning and ending at Endicott Park. Mr. Benson, welcome.
Welcome, and thank you. Well, thank you for having me, and have a good night. No. I want to thank you for your time, seeing us and letting us have this road race out of Endicott Park. As Gardner just said, it is for fundraising for Dana-Farber and the Jimmy Fund. This will be our third year. We have already talked with the police and the safety professionals about the run. It's the same course. They're on board with it. We will meet with them just prior to the run to coordinate and make sure everything's in place where we have to have safety personnel. Other than that, last year we added an event for the kids, a little run, pretty much inside Endicott Park. And I'll tell you, we gave them all little gold medals, little plastic. Their eyes couldn't have been bigger. Everyone, it was like they won the gold medal. It was unbelievable. It was fun. And hopefully this year we have, every year we seem to be getting more traction. And we keep raising a little bit more for Dana-Farber and Jimmy Fund. And I can't think of anything better to try to raise money for.
Thank you. Selectman Mills, any questions, sir?
I just like, how many years have you done this?
This will be our third.
Thank you for your wonderful work.
Selectman Langus?
Did you say there's a smaller one for kids?
It's a .5. Well, it's not even a .5. It's probably a 2. Literally, if you know Endicott Park, where the gate to go down where the animal barn is, just prior to that, if you go up to where the children's playground is, and then come back down, just that one little loop.
Oh, that's good.
Once, we do it about 5 minutes before the actual run. They love it. They just, and then we have, the announcer, my wife Maureen will be on the microphone, and she'll be saying, and here comes little Johnny, and Sally right behind her, or Sally's catching him, and they love it. Their eyes are bright.
That's good. That's the one I should do, but that's,
We accept walkers.
walking's good.
You could walk that,
No,
or you
that's
could walk the
really
route.
nice.
It's a very easy, flat route.
Where does everybody park?
Majority of people are parking at the church right up the street,
good.
and we have a letter from Father Bruce. He's been very gracious to us in allowing us to park on that one side.
Yeah,
Glen Magna lets us park in there also.
beautiful.
So,
Oh, good to know. Thank you. Thank
thank
you for
you.
doing this.
Selectman Bennett?
No questions. Good luck, Dave.
Selectman Clark?
My only question, I think you kind of answered it. I was worried about the St. Richard's Church being impeded if they have mass. I don't know how early they have the mass on Sunday morning.
Yeah, no, they're fine. Our run doesn't go off until 10. So and Father Bruce knows that, and he's aware, and he says we can use these spots over here. And like I said, this will be our third year, and there hasn't been an issue. But we were concerned about that also.
Okay, that's fine. I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
I've had the privilege of volunteering for the event, so I enjoy doing so. Is there any other questions on the application? I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the application as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks very much. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much. I'll talk to you all later.
The board will meet a recent town manager appointee to the Preservation Commission. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew Barnum is in the audience tonight. He's, I guess in Danvers years, he's a pretty recent addition to the town, although I just learned he's been here 3 years. He reached out to the town to join this particular commission. I'll allow him to introduce himself. I'll note, with a full-time job and 3 kids under 5, I'm not sure where he's going to find the time to do this, but I had a nice conversation with him on the phone, and he's eager to contribute.
Would you please go to the podium, sir? Introduce yourself. We're on camera, so people at home will be watching.
I'm Andrew Barnum. I am very new to Danvers, is what I'm learning. We came here about 3 years ago from San Diego. Moved to Cherry Street, where I discovered that homes were built, prior to 1950. It was an 1850s colonial, and then subsequently moved up to Locust to a first period home, where I discovered a lot of the writings of Richard Trask and the deep history of Danvers. And it's just become really a source of both interest and pride in our own old house, and really started to enjoy and love this town. We've just welcomed our 3rd son 5 weeks ago. Our 2nd son was also born here, and building our family, putting down roots, and saw the opportunity to get involved and happened to align with something that we find a lot of passion in, and looking at historic buildings and structures and trying to determine the stories they tell, and just love the opportunity to get to know all of you and work with the town and the commission.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Selectman Langley's.
Oh, he's almost got an infield. We're doing good. He's a good addition to Danvers, so keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Now, looking forward to it.
Selectman Bennett.
Thank you for volunteering to work on this committee, and thank you for working on preserving that nice first period house, and welcome to Danvers.
Constant work is
I'm-
what I'm finding.
I'm sure.
I'm going to Home Depot after this. So.
Selectman Clark.
They call them black holes.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that, yeah.
Welcome to Danvers in that respect, and to the Historic Preservation Commission. I wish you luck up there. I've been involved with it for a long time, and I think it's very important to maintain that neighborhood in as pristine a condition as possible. It's certainly better now than it was back in, I think it was, 75, I think it was, or 74 we first did it. But there's some really interesting houses up there in that district, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And thank you very much, and good luck with your house in town.
Yes, thank you.
It's a major undertaking.
Selectman Mills.
Welcome and thank you for your service.
No, thank you very much.
I want to welcome you to the community as well. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining the community and joining in right away as a volunteer.
Happy to
Appreciate
do
it.
Thank you.
This does not require a vote, and we want to thank you for being here. Item 5, the board will hear a request from the chair of the Danvers Traffic Advisory Committee regarding approval of new accessible icon. Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. I thought I would take advantage of the board, and since I was here, I think I have the next 3 agenda items, so I thought it'd be more efficient to put it all in one little short slideshow so we can
Sure.
get through here as quickly as possible. We are looking for a couple of votes, so we'll stop, and happy to take questions at an appropriate spot. So I'm up first to deal with some transportation safety issues. And then we have David Fields, our planning director, and Stephen King, town engineer, here to talk also complete streets. But first, we'll start with the accessible icon. So in your packet, we did provide you with a link to learn more about this project. The Transportation Advisory Committee was approached by a Danvers resident who's been involved in this initiative, started in Cambridge, Mass., and has spread pretty quickly across the country, kind of as a grassroots thing. But some jurisdictions have started adopting this. The state of New York, the state of California, most notably, have adopted the revised icon on the right-hand side of the screen. And she approached the town to see if we would be willing to use it locally where possible. And because this is regulatory in nature, the Transportation Advisory Committee didn't feel comfortable making that call without the selectmen's approval. So I'm here tonight to hopefully solicit that approval from you for this revised icon. And again, with the caveat that there are places where we will not be able to use it due to federal or state jurisdiction, but there are instances locally where we can use it, and we wanted your permission to go in that direction. I do have one other item, but I will stop here for questions.
Selectman Bennett?
Thank you. Yes, I was at the meeting when it was presented to us, and I certainly endorse this concept and change wholeheartedly. It certainly makes sense, and I'm hoping we can encroach on some of our state areas and do it as well. So I'll ask you to look into that. I wouldn't
Curious, they
bother.
put it on their website, but they don't use, they don't use it on the ground. but
Right,
they are
and I
using
don't
it on
think
their
they've
website.
decided not to use it.
That's one
Is
way-
that correct?
That's fair.
That's fair. So I would urge you to put it in as many places as you can. The federal spots, I wouldn't even bother with those folks.
Unfortunately, we
but,
have too
You
many.
know, I mean,
so-
at least we can, I don't know how many federal spots we have that are affected, but I wholeheartedly endorse this new logo, this updated icon, and hopefully the board will support you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Clark?
Aaron, is the updated icon readily available to purchase? I mean, I've never seen it before this.
Yep.
So that some of the companies, you can buy the
Yep.
the handicapped parking
Yep.
lot.
Yep.
You can do.
Yep.
Now, does this mean you're gonna be incorporating different, painting, templates for the highway
To
department?
what extent we've discussed it, we're not going to go out and replace every sign, every icon, but as things come up for replacement, we'd be using this new standard. But again, we still have to go back and kind of figure that level of detail out. This was only put on our radar screen about 2 months ago, so it's just been working through the process, but we haven't gotten to that level. But I don't anticipate us buying new signs to replace existing ones, but replacing them as they need to be.
Now, would you be encouraging private enterprise, the private places that have handicap spots, to use this icon rather than the traditional one?
It'd be
Something to think
nice if
about.
we used the updated, if we all use the updated icon. I don't know that we can mandate it, per se, but not opposed to it.
Well,
When they come to project review, I suppose that's our spot
Yeah.
to make the push.
and I would think that if the town had a template made for the spray painting of on the surface, that you certainly could lend them to the companies that you'd be encouraging to use this icon if you wanted to go to it. I just, you know, it's gonna be difficult to get people to understand this, I think, really, initially, with the other ones been so ingrained in us for all this length of time. Now, the ones above, are those new ones also?
No, those, in the image in the packet, the top line there was the icon set that was developed in the 1960s.
Yeah,
And if you see the bottom left image is that same.
Same one, yes.
1960s, that's how they drew the person in the wheelchair. And so
Yeah.
what this new icon represents was kind of, why did they even draw it that way at that time? If you look, the figures are quite different.
yeah,
So no, those are all the original.
thank you.
Yep.
Selectman Mills?
If the Traffic Advisory Committee thinks it's a good idea, I certainly will endorse it.
Thank you. Selectman Langus?
No, and I think it's wonderful. It's a very positive emblem, so I totally support it.
I too support it. I actually have two tangentially related questions. One is, can we paint the stripes for the van accessibility areas blue as well? And the reason I ask is I often see cars parked there, especially down at CVS, the lot in front of CVS, and others, they think they can park there because it isn't marked handicap, when it in fact is part of the handicap spot for van accessibility.
Have to look into it. I don't
Okay.
have an answer off the top of my head.
The other is, I understand this, and I understand, but need to verify, that the state raised their fine structure on handicap parking to $500. I know that the town adopted several years ago the top fine at the time, which was $300, and that's what we're at. But if the state has gone up to $500, I'd be willing to make it a selectman's warrant request to go up to that amount too. I'm wondering if someone can look into what the state cap is
Well,
at this point.
we can handle that.
Okay,
We'll take a
great.
look.
Are you on number one or two? You're on
Someone-
number one.
Yeah, I
Number one.
am. I realize it's related
It
to
just-
handicap parking though. So,
Mr. Trask, can I make a comment?
sure.
You say you're going to replace them as needed. it really doesn't make sense to me, because that'll take a long time to get them all replaced as an on-need basis. I'd much rather you come back or come forwards to the town manager with a program to get a certain percentage done in a given year, so that in 3 years, it's done. Now, that would be my recommendation, so.
I'd love to do it, but we'll look into it. We'll come back with a plan.
Thank you.
The other thing, Aaron, is I know a lot of the handicap spaces were not in total compliance in that they wouldn't put the sign up. They'd have it marked in the ground, but they wouldn't do it with the vertical sign, which I understand cannot be enforced unless there's both the logo on the ground and the vertical sign. I know the vertical sign is more of a problem with private places, the shopping centers, McDonald's, places like that. But I think that this is a good opportunity for us to try to improve that compliance with these regulations, because there's nothing that makes me more angry than see people come in and park on a handicapped accessible lot when they're not handicapped. I did have an incident a few weeks ago. A town truck went into McDonald's down on High Street and parked on a handicapped lot, and I went ballistic with the guy. He was all apologies, and he, quotation marks, didn't realize it, and he moved the truck before he got his coffee. But it was interesting, because a lot that happens an awful lot with private people.
Look into that.
Any other comments on this subject? So, is there a vote necessary for this?
Yes, please.
I move
Mr.
that
Henry?
we accept the emblem as presented.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to present the emblem as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, thank you.
Thank you. So, moving on, one other DTAC item. I don't have a picture for it, but you have it in your packet. We have been looking at the area in and around Town Hall for parking, and one complaint we've gotten a lot of is for our employees who have to be here at 8 a.m., conflict with another area, another property in the area using our parking lot, and that's forcing our workers to kind of have to run around the neighborhood and find a space. And so we'd like your permission. Not sure, it doesn't have to go into a code, but we kind of wanted a nod of the heads, if you're so inclined, to create 5 or 6 spaces in the parking lot here off of Elm Street that we can dedicate for town hall use, with the understanding that that's most likely to be used by our employees who get here before 8 a.m. and need to find a place to park. There will be we are looking at the area, and there will be subsequent regulatory changes that I anticipate making to the parking in and around the building, but that's one that we don't need to wait for. And we're trying to get this done so that, you may recall, we have the veterans spot that's going to be going in, and a little change to the handicap parking space here. We were here probably in December, I think, on that one. So I want to tie that in, so when that work gets done, we can do all of the work that we can do before we get to the regulatory changes. So there was some information in the packet. If I'm happy to take any questions on that one, that's pretty straightforward.
As this is DTAC, I'll ask our representative Scott.
Actually, this is the first I've seen of this. I must have missed a meeting. Is those 6 spaces enough, Aaron? And why the ones to the right and not to the left?
Right. We have some regular users that like their space. So this is to satisfy some of those folks who have a particular spot they want to be at in that lot. Yeah, I think maybe you must have missed me, because we did talk about this I'm not sure which month it was, but so we were thinking we only need 5 or 6. It's not certainly enough for the whole building, but again, we have a couple of workers, a handful of workers that show up here quite early and are blocked out of that lot, and so that's really just to cover kind of the.
So this is for employees only, not visitors?
It would be town hall use.
Town hall use.
But at that hour, it's
gonna be
understood that
down.
it's going to likely be first filled by our early.
So if I came later in the day, I could park there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Selectman Clark.
Anything to keep the employees off the immediate parking lot in front of this building is fine.
Right.
With me. That's something that I've been very strong about for quite a while, that the residents of the community should have access to the front of the building when they come here, rather than employees to park
We do
all
twice a
day.
year. We do twice a year, put out a memo to remind employees at the immediate spaces are for town business.
Thank you, Selectman Mills.
Thank you. I think I heard Dan question the number of 6 parking spaces. It seems to me that it might make sense to have that entire area, I guess, 9 on one side and 7 on the other side, to be reserved during town hall hours for employees and town hall use. I don't know who else would be parking there on a regular basis. Is it some businesses in the area? I mean,
The church across the street has a
oh,
program
the
twice a
Episcopal
day.
Church for
Yep.
their various
Yep.
meetings.
Yep. And again, I don't think I get, at the staff level, I guess I shouldn't put words in it, but for my take on it is that we don't need, it works most of the time. It's just a little bit of a crunch early in the morning when our workforce is arriving. It tends to overlap when they're getting out.
7 o'clock meeting at the church gets out at 8.
Yep.
Yeah, I
And-
drive through there every day at 8:25 going to the exercise class at the Y. And I see certain town employees that I know who, they have their regular spaces there.
Yep.
And while we're on the subject, commercial utilization of the next strip, I see some Tedesco truck there that is a truck big enough, I guess if the Stop and Shop truck
Yeah.
breaks down on the highway, they call Tedesco. I've never seen such a big truck, and it sticks out and kind of blocks the passageway there. And it's like, why do we have a Tedesco truck parking in our parking lot?
Person that
that's
runs
a-
it lives down the street.
We are aware of that situation, and I would imagine at some point in the next 6 to 9 months, we'll be coming back to figure that situation out. It's not universally loved, is the feedback I'm getting.
See,
I
there
will
was some
speak nothing of
signs-
Mr. Bradstreet over my shoulder, who reports
Well, he
regularly on
lives
the status
closest,
and
so
utilization of
if
that
it's
lot.
okay with Bill, then,
It's not,
not.
it's not okay.
and I see a couple signs that say commercial parking in
Yep.
here.
So I think there's some history to that, and tonight
sure
I'm
there- I'm
probably
sure there
not
is.
well prepared to discuss it, but I know that there's some history there, and I think that, I don't think we have to move on from that use, but I do think we need to clarify how that may be used
Well,
by
you're
those
being
users.
attentive to the situation,
Right.
so.
So we'll probably be back with some clarifications on that lot, I would guess, in the next 6 to 9 months.
That's the biggest tow truck I ever saw in my life. Yeah.
Selectman Amos?
I think it had something to do with moving them off the Hobart lot and getting them down there.
Yep.
So I agree with Dan. You know, one of the things that's really lousy is, I know some of the town hall workers' cars, and they're in the street, and they're there all day because they work all day. And so it makes more sense to me, I know there's 2 meetings over there, and it makes more sense to me to get the town hall people off the side streets and let them go to their meeting for an hour and leave and clear out the street, because it's really a nuisance
Yeah.
driving down there with people parked on both sides. So I really support Dan on getting getting the town hall people in there for the day. You know, they leave for lunch, they come back or whatever, but keeping them off the street for 8 hours, then having them on the street and letting the people go to the meeting for an hour, come park, leave. That's what street parking's for, come park, do your thing, and then leave. So I'd rather see, you know, accommodate the town hall workers, get them over there, and, you know, I think
Yeah, we
that's a
certainly,
better idea, too.
we didn't want to
No,
go
I-
too big. We figured that might be
I'd really
upsetting to
rather
the
see the
board,
town
but
hall
it's
workers
pleasant to hear it the
off
other
the
way.
street,
Okay.
off the street completely, because they're there all day if they park
Yep.
in the street.
The changes that we're looking at in the triangle area, kind of on this side and this side of Town
Yeah.
Hall, will require, most likely, if we go through with it, it would require code changes, so we'll be back, so I can provide you an update at that time and how, we'll look more into this parking lot, and we'll provide more of an update on that when we get back with the other regulatory changes.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree that if you want more spaces, I'd be happy to have you have more spaces. And I also agree about the tow truck, which you can actually see at the top right-hand corner of the picture. It's massive. And I would have thought that the town lots were all treated equally as far as the permitted use of the lots? Because I know several years ago, we went through this with Hobart and commercial vehicles overnight for so on and so forth.
That's why they're parking there now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would have thought that we would just uniformly have done it in any town lot. But if it needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, I look forward to you coming back then. I'll accept a motion on this proposal.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, I was actually going to introduce the Planning and Economic Development Director, David Fields. But before I do that, we just wanted to touch on briefly just complete streets. This may sound familiar to you to a degree. Back in 2016, the short-lived Bike Ped Committee did come before the board to discuss the concept in a slightly different context. We were talking about bike and pedestrian improvements in the community and tangentially touched on complete streets as a possible funding mechanism. The program at the state level was very new at that time. And as it turns out, in the 2016 timeframe, the town of Danvers didn't move forward with that program at that time for a number of reasons. That program now is better understood. The rules and regulations have been fleshed out. And so we're back here tonight to talk a little bit more about potentially adopting a complete streets policy that would open up optional or discretionary funding opportunities through the Chapter 90 program. This is an extension of a Chapter 90 reimbursement program. It's totally optional. But again, it would open up potential funding opportunities from the state level for certain aspects of roadway construction. And so with that, I will let Mr. Fields walk you through the next couple of slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron. As Aaron mentioned, my name is David Fields. I'm the planning director here for the town. Here tonight to talk about complete streets. So I'll start off by saying, what are complete streets? Complete streets are streets designed and operated to enable safe use and support mobility for all users in all travel modes, including walking, biking, transit, and motor vehicles. It's essentially a context-sensitive approach to project design and construction of the road network with the goal of creating safety and mobility for all users. So why the Complete Streets program? Why should Danvers pursue this at all? Really, the state's trying to incorporate complete streets into the local roadways with an incentive-based approach. So 77% of all Massachusetts roadways are locally controlled, and there's no way for the state to actually mandate complete streets treatments on those without going through some kind of program like this. The program will provide an incentive for municipalities to incorporate complete streets into their roadway network by actually allowing them a funding mechanism to do that. So currently, there's no real way to do that outside of Chapter 90 or the TIP process. So what does the program do? Essentially, the Complete Streets program provides technical assistance and construction funding to eligible municipalities. Municipalities have to complete a 3-tiered system to become eligible. The first tier of that system is staff has to go through training to understand the program and figure out how it's administered. And then municipalities must adopt a complete streets policy. So that's one of the reasons that I'm here tonight to talk about it. Tier 2 is the development of a prioritization plan. And the state actually allows towns to apply for up to $38,000 in technical assistance to hire outside consultants to work with town staff on that prioritization plan. So to come up with certain areas of town where we want to use that fund or work through the technical aspects of developing that plan itself to execute. And then tier 3 is application for project construction funding. So that's up to $400,000 per cycle, which is really about $400,000 per year, in addition to our Chapter 90 money that could be used going forward for town projects. Part of the why, back to the why, is as you can see on the map, these are other communities that have applied for this program. So as I mentioned, it's a tiered system. So the communities in full green are communities with approved policies. So what I'm looking to ask for adoption for tonight. Communities in green with a black hash mark have approved prioritization plans. And communities in orange have already received construction funding for approved projects. So as you can see, Danvers, I'm not sure where the pointers are, is right about here. We are pretty much surrounded with communities in orange with the exception of a few communities to our north. And I know that Hamilton recently just submitted a complete streets policy, so they'll be up on the board pretty soon. A few projects that have recently come to fruition in the town were projects at Maple Street and Summer Street, and the project at Poplar and Locust, and both of these projects would have been eligible for the full $400,000 in funding, each on their own. So money that we could have taken advantage of had we gone forward. We haven't, but hopefully we can. Happy to take questions, looking forward to the policy adoption and getting construction funding in May 2020. I know that was very fast, so feel free to fire them at me.
That was awesome.
Can I, I'd like to, before, may I offer just a couple of comments on top of what Aaron and David just said, just for some context. So we, under the Chapter 90 formula, the town gets roughly $900,000 a year for state, for local roadway projects. So the discretionary funding that they just described is almost half of what it would expand by 50%, potentially the funding that we have for road projects. And our local match, you know, in a good year, we're funding $300,000 to $400,000 out of free cash for roadway projects. In a tight year, $200,000. So this is twice what we fund locally, and nearly half of what the state provides us on an annual basis. So for the, as noted here, for the two projects we completed, that would be a significant offset. The other point, just to echo what Aaron said at the beginning, these are sort of project by project decisions. There's no, by adopting a policy, there's no requirement that we incorporate all of the aspects into every project we do. It gives us the flexibility to pick and choose projects where it makes sense to pursue the funding to offset some of our local costs for those things. So, as noted, this was a recommendation that was first born in the bicycle pedestrian study that was completed, and you know, since 2016, we have seen towns and cities completing quality projects with these funds. So Stephen King and David spent a lot of time working on the draft that you received tonight with the goal of making it a Danvers appropriate policy and not just a cut and paste from what other communities have adopted. So I just wanted to offer that context.
Thanks, Steve.
Can
I think
ask
for-
a question?
Sure, haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, we haven't gotten there yet?
Nope, I was gonna start with Selectman Clark.
Oh, all right.
Okay, I had some discussions with Kate a couple of years ago when you first talked about this, and I wasn't totally sold on it, but I wasn't given the perspective that you have with the kind of funding that's coming from the state on this. I do want to make some statements generically about improving streets and then back off, because I was very strongly lobbied by my son and my wife on this issue after they read over this information. I guess starting out being the curmudgeon, that some of our streets are just not suitable for bike path or bike rail trails in the nature of the street. I want to use the analogy that a lot of our older main streets in this town are nothing but modernized cow paths. Hobart Street and Wenham Street are two examples that I'd use that are probably the most crooked streets in town. They were laid out as they could get the cows from the Highlands down to the plains, or get them in from Wenham into the areas of Putnamville. So I can't possibly ever see in some of those places us being able to accommodate rail trails on them. Use an example, Route 35 in Danvers. It's known as High Street and Water Street. The High Street section's fantastic. It was redone about 25 years ago from Danvers Square down to 128. Then it squeezes up a bit, get down beyond the Baptist Church, and then all of a sudden at about 70 to 78 or so, Water Street is very, very constricted as you go up over that hill before you get to Endicott Street. There's no way that you could ever accommodate safely a bike lane in there with traffic going on that street, because it's a main artery between Salem and Danvers. So we have some main arteries, Route 62, Route 35, that have real heavy commercial traffic as well as regular commuting traffic. And I would, for some of those places, I'd be very reluctant to be able to give people the illusion they have a safe place to ride a bicycle. I mean, when I was 10 years old, I could ride down to Sandy Beach, go to Sandy Beach. David, I got to bring up some memories you and I might have. Or go down to Vacation Bible School at Baptist Church, or go up Locust Street to the reservoir to go fishing. Didn't think anything of it. But today, I'd hesitate big time about having a 10 or 11-year-old kid riding that length of roads because of the traffic we have involved, and because of the tremendous increase in large-sized commercial trucks we have. All we have to do is go back to this past weekend in Cambridge, where that woman who had been a veteran bicycle rider in the city of Boston evidently swerved and got caught under a big cement truck and died. And I hate to see this happen. I don't want to in any way be kind of a contributory factor to unsafe conditions. So if you're going to go item by item, space by space, like these projects, I can see that. That makes 100% purpose. I don't know who typed this, but only as a English teacher curmudgeon, look at your bottom paragraph on that page. You've got 3 supposed sentences. The middle sentence, which takes up about 4 or 5 lines, has no verb in it. So try to restructure that before. Oh, you got the same thing. Whatever. See, I do my homework sometimes, I guess, but it's if it's going to be presented to the people in town and the critics, we want to have it a little bit dressed up. Let's see. And you wouldn't be going where the state has jurisdiction with the state highways. You wouldn't be considering Route 114, Route 1, even though Route 1 was developed with sidewalks the whole length of it, as was 128 when it was first built, because it was a garden street type thing. I think that is the only things that on the last page, I don't know, I have a problem with the selectmen giving up any kind of jurisdiction over it because of being the traffic advisors or the traffic consultant for the town. And I'd like to see us still have some kind of a say in sometimes if there's going to be some major item. But as far as overall, if we can make the streets safer without putting bollards down the whole side of them like they did in Longfellow Bridge in Cambridge, that's fine. But I don't think the residents should be assured that it's going to be totally safe to drive and ride in our streets in town because of the heavy traffic. You got a challenge to do this. And good luck, Stephen. It's a good job to get started with your new role.
Selectman Mills.
Sounds very thoughtful. Nothing else?
Selectman Lickness.
So perhaps, I don't know if this would be you, Steve, or Dave, or Aaron, or somebody. So I love that you have an example up there, these 2 intersections that we've worked on, and of course, Complete Streets is a long process and area by area, and every time we do a street, we'll be incorporating, as you see in other towns, as they do it. But, so I guess always from a finance point, so had we done, let's take Locust Street, had we had this in place and we would be eligible for up to 400, or would that have qualified for 400?
We would have been eligible for the money.
400.
Yeah. I believe it's a competitive program. So, but by going through the steps that David laid out, we would have been able to apply for funds to offset the cost of both these projects.
And so when you get these funds, I'm assuming they don't just say, okay, we couldn't have done exactly what we did. Would we have had to have put some sort of striping in, some sort of bike lanes? Or is it just that you widened it to a right point? What makes it qualify that it's a street that's for biking? Why would that have qualified?
Sure. So not necessarily. What really happens with that prioritization plan is staff working with that consultant would go through, develop appropriate treatments for this intersection or any intersection or just part of any street, submit that to the state. The state then reviews it and will tell you what portions of it are eligible. So they're not really going to come back and tell you how to redesign everything. They'll just tell you if they're going to fund certain portions or not. They may not fund any portion of the project. They may fund it in full. So really, it depends on what the town wants to do. And it doesn't need to be bike treatments either. It's sidewalks, it's crosswalks, it's curb bump outs, flashing beacons. I don't know if you want to add anything, Steve?
Yeah, just for example, Maple and Summer Street, how we didn't have a previous crossing at the T intersection. That'd be an eligible cost reimbursed to us. We're putting in an extra handicap accessible entryway to cross over Summer Street instead of having someone walk up the sidewalk along the edge of the road, then cross over the Vineyard Ave.
So if I could, so Maple Street is 62, which is a state road, correct?
It's a town-owned road. It was laid out to us by the county commissioners. So we own that portion of Route 62.
So that portion, and then the portion down past Nichols Street is not ours? And you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, up to a portion of that, it does turn into a state highway layout.
Okay, so is it something that to qualify, if it connects to like a rail trail? Or is that something that would be taken into consideration, or is it strictly the rehab of a road?
I believe it can incorporate that, because it creates a mode of transportation for pedestrian, bicyclists. It does give you can easily increase the usability of the roadway as well for cars and traffic. So I think that would be an eligible cost.
Okay, and in your opinion, tell me the negatives of allowing the state to come in and be a part of this. Is there anything that they will take over, as I've heard, that they will have say on, that we will lose control over? Or is it strictly we submit the project, if we don't like what they say, we just can withdraw it and go back to use our Chapter 90 monies the way we would have? Is there something that,
This goes into our prioritization plan in Tier 2. So that's when we come up with a list of projects that we feel the state would actually help benefit us on doing the construction on. If we didn't feel like it would benefit us, then we could actually just pull it off the list.
so you could just pull it off the list and stay with our Chapter 90?
Correct.
You know, I'm always saying anytime we can get outside money, that's a good job. And I look at those two intersections, which I think, by the way, are coming out. The Maple Street's coming out beautiful. It's a great job. Poplar and Locust is gorgeous. So if we could have been reimbursed almost half that money, there we could be now doing Nichols, or we, you know, I think now of, if we had had it for both, that's another 800,000, there's another intersection. It really does add up quickly. And we did both those in, what, 5 years from start of construction of Locust, not start a plan.
Construction,
Not
yeah,
start
3
a
years.
plan. I think Wayne just got here when we started that plan. But I think it's great. I always get nervous when we let somebody else in, but we already know of a couple of spots that we need to redo to make it safer for people to cross. And so I think it's a great plan. Thank you.
I think a lot of the programs that have been rolled out in the last few years the approach has been a little bit different, whether it's the Community Compact program from the current administration or this. You see aspects of that with MSBA where they're trying to incentivize behavior, so they're not going to require us to do anything. But if we agree with what they think is an important sort of concept to incorporate into design, then they're saying we'll help offset the cost of that. So there's no obligation to do that. But it's what we would much rather have an incentive-based partnership with the state than, you know, a mandated relationship.
And we know with the rail trail that we have an area right now that we're looking at that is going to be a lot of money. You know, we're going to need some assistance, but if some of that is ours and it links us to Endicott Park also, then this is, you know, we've talked about linking things to Endicott Park, making that friendlier for families to get to. And I see this and I say, this is just beautiful as we, you know, come off that trail and try to get families up there. So thank you.
Selectman Bennett?
Thank you. Questions about the funding itself. I'm sure this is not something that is, well, it's available every year, but is it unlimited funds? The more they'll fund every project that meets the requirements? Or, in other words, as more communities adopt this, will the state run out of funds like the CPA?
Well, my understanding is that it is capped on a yearly basis, so depending on how many communities are actually involved or asking for the money, the state will divvy it up, not evenly. It will go to certain projects. Some people may not get it that year. You just keep replying every year.
So they'll fund X amount of projects at the full 400,000, up to.
Correct.
And then when they've stopped, then you have to wait and get in line again.
Yeah, that's my understanding, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
To build off Selectman Bennett's question, do they do reimbursement? If we were to do this project, if we were an established community, had a plan, which included Maple Street and Summer Street, we did those things we felt were conducive to that, you know, as part of the plan, and, you know, the crossing or wider sidewalks or whatever it were, would they reimburse on other years, or is it only the, you know, the year that you apply in?
It's whatever is on the prioritization plan. So when you apply with the prioritization plan, that project is allocated a certain portion of funding. So it can't be used for other projects regardless of the.
I'm not asking if it can be used on other projects. If we applied for Maple Street and Summer Street. After the fact. If we applied and they didn't have funding that year, but we still went through and did it, can we apply after the fact for funding? They may have run out of projects, but that first year, or the year we did it. Just wondering, and you may not have that answer.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
It's still fairly new, so I don't think anybody's even crossed
Yeah, I
that
don't
bridge
think
yet.
it's come up.
Okay.
But the good news is these projects are 5 or 6 or 7 years in the making, so we might get multiple opportunities to apply on
Okay.
a particular project. And I think the key is the elements that would be eligible for reimbursement first have to pass the test that locally we think it makes sense to incorporate into the project. So it's unlikely that we would design the Maple Summer Street intersection differently just to try to access some of that funding. So it would only help, I mean, it would bring down our costs if we're successful, and if not, we probably would have chosen to do that anyway.
But I guess to build off of Selectman Langlois' question, if we were at the beginning of the process on Maple Street and Summer Street, and we were already in the program and said, you know what? We have to take some land by eminent domain already. If we take another 3 feet on one side of the road for an anticipated bike path, or bike lane, whatever the correct terminology is, how far do you actually have to build that? I mean, it wouldn't be contiguous because we wouldn't go all the way down Maple Street, and we wouldn't go all the way, to the other end of the, because we're only working on that section of road. How does that work if we would want it to, if we're planning ahead, we're thinking ahead and saying, okay, we can't, you eat the elephant one bite at a time. So this is a bite. Do they allow for that kind of pre-planning or that kind of foresight that says, okay, we can't, we're gonna build a bike lane, it's only gonna be 500 yards, or it might be from one intersection to the next intersection, realizing it's not yet contiguous. But
They look at that, I mean, their primary goal is to make a continuous network.
right,
So they would have to view that as, what's your big picture? What are you gonna put in your entire prioritization plan? Is it just gonna stop there, or are you gonna continue on? What's your kind of your end goal for that
because
project?
I could see that kind of thing going from the rail trail, making a rail trail entrance if we continue the rail town down that area.
They should use a microphone.
Oh,
But they should.
oh, they should. It might go up to Summer Street, from Summer Street to a rail trail connection kind of thing, so, just wondering. You probably don't have an answer, you can't answer authoritatively to that, I'm just wondering.
We'll look into that, definitely.
Okay,
I think that Diane hit on something that's very, very appropriate, is that it may be, this project could very easily be a good answer, in part, to our challenge to work on the proposed rail trail from Nichols Street up to the old power plant, leading up to the old state hospital site. So you've got about a half mile of proposed rail trail. It was interrupted by Route 95, by a couple of off-ramps, by access to Old Maple Street in a couple of places. But you might be able to work with that, I would think, somewhat, because that is a major expense we're going to have in that part of the thing. I know
just
you
would
walked
say,
it a lot,
One
too.
of the other general updates I was gonna steal while I was here has to do with that project, so if you, we can come back to that in just a
Okay, I
few
didn't mean to
minutes and
steal, I
give you
just
an
think
update
it's a
on
great
the-
idea that we could be using it almost immediately on something like that.
any other questions on this recommendation?
Is it just the Board of Selectmen, or do we go to town meeting with this?
This board.
Just a-
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the project as submitted.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. All in
Oh,
favor?
Excuse me, are we accepting a project or are we adopting the complete streets policy?
The complete streets policy.
Policy.
Yep.
policy, yeah.
No, it's not a project, it's the policy. Yes, you're
So
correct.
we're adopting, okay, thank you.
With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. You're 3 for 3.
Thank you.
Okay. One last thing, and I'm sorry to impose upon you, but I
Not
don't,
at all.
I don't get the FaceTime, so I figured while I was here, I would cover a few other things that the Land Use and Community Services Department has been up to lately. Kind of two big broad ones, community and economic development and the rail trail. So I'll fly through the first ones, although feel free to stop me with questions. I've been on staff for just over 6 months. Mr. Field's been on staff for just over 3, maybe 4. Over that time, we've really done a lot. Well, I like think we've been busy. We've been out there meeting a lot of businesses, participating in the local chambers, the airport, been at the business parks. We've been working with the city of Beverly and the Cherry Hill Business Park in particular on trying to get a shuttle going from the depot through the Cumming Center out to Cherry Hill. We're getting close on that. That's been a really exciting project to work on. We've been working on the demographic trends research. I know you got a kind of a sneak peek of that back at the December 8th meeting, I think it was, when I came and kind of did a little front-end prologue to, I think it's your financial summit. We've been continuing to develop that slide deck, kind of taking it, that was kind of a focus on the financials. We've been developing that more broadly as a community summary of demographic change. And I think you'll see more out of us in the coming months on where we're at with that. I like to think that's kind of a page turner. Also, one thing that just happened last week was that and this was really through David's hard work, we were designated a bronze community by MassBio. MassBio is a large, it's a nonprofit organization representing the Commonwealth's biotech firms. And really what that means is basically for things we already do, our land use controls, they recognize us as a bronze level. Now we can go all the way up to platinum. There are some communities around us that have higher designations than bronze. But without having to do anything to the regulatory environment, we were able to obtain bronze status. And that basically means MassBio is now putting us on their materials that are going out to, multinational companies that are playing the life cycles game, the life science game, just reaching a market that we could never do on our own. And again, we didn't have to do anything to get this. We just had to submit and go through the paperwork of getting the town recognized. So I really want to give kudos to David for attaining that status. And hopefully in the coming, maybe, 12 months, 24 months, we'll be talking about some of the things we can do to maybe go up a level or two in that designation. I know it's no news to you, but one thing that we've learned in our time doing kind of out and about with the businesses is how much life science we have here. We both came from a place, I started in the city of Cambridge and ended up in Lexington where we had a strong life science sector. But in those, my experience to date has been with kind of the R&D and the lab aspect of that R&D. And Danvers really has a unique role in the life science field here in that we do a lot of device manufacturing that's critical. So those guys are coming up with the idea. Then you have to build it and get it to market. And that's where our town comes into play. So I really think there's a lot we can do there that to help those businesses get to market better. And that's something that we're going to pursue over the next couple of months as we continue to learn more about the community and the local economy. We've also, and Ms. Langley and I talked briefly about this, we've been continuing our work on the downtown corridor. So the planning board was going to move from the Maple Street 40R district at the Hot Wat area and look at High Street. Board of Selectmen asked us to look at C1, C1A, the downtown, and we decided we'd kind of look at the whole thing holistically. And so we've been, we're actually pretty well far along with the zoning proposal, and now we're about to begin the pivot to the public outreach portion of that. Our last meeting with the planning board was kind of, I'll say it's an internal meeting. Obviously, it was a public meeting, and people are welcome to come to those meetings. But that was kind of our last check-in with the planning board before pivoting. Unfortunately, the weather intervened, and that meeting had to be canceled last Tuesday. So we're now about 4 weeks behind where we want to be. But still, nonetheless, this spring, you'll see us start to pivot and start doing a lot more outreach with the community. Largely, this is modeled on what we did at the Hot Wat end of downtown. So you shouldn't see anything, wildly different. But again, we're going to be looking to the neighborhoods to start doing some outreach soon. Also wanted to touch base on a change to the farmers market for the 2019 season that we're fairly well along with. Patronage location has been a bit of an issue. Rotary approached us and said, what can we do to make this work better? And working with David Mountain and Cheryl James regarding the summer concert series, we've decided to try something different for this summer. So it will be a little shorter. We're going to still do it on Wednesdays, but we're going to move it to the library. We've been working with Mr. Lent on an appropriate spot at the library. We're honing in on that. We're working with Rotary, and Cheryl James are developing a joint solicitation for the businesses to make sure we weren't stepping on each other's toes as we go out there and find sponsors for these events. And we're also talking about a broader array of vendors. We've learned a lot in the last couple of seasons, and I think we're really excited about the changes that we're proposing, and we'll be back with more details, but just wanted to use tonight as an opportunity to share with you some of the changes that we're working on for 2019.
Some questions before we get to rail trail. 'Cause
Sure.
I know there's going to be a lot of questions about that. The farmer's market, is that at the same time as the concert series?
It's
Or
a little
the
before.
concert?
It's a little before.
Because I can tell you, some of those concerts are packed
Yep.
for parking. So
Yep.
I'm just wondering how that
Yep,
logistically would
parking
work.
we have to come up with a parking management plan for these events. We're doing that, and we'll be coming out with kind of how that'll all work in the coming weeks.
Just to throw out one idea, off the top of my head, is it possible to use the senior center buses and shuttle people back and forth from the
great
Hobart
idea.
Street lot?
Yep. We
to-
haven't gotten to that level of detail, but that's certainly a possibility. The one thing that we're thinking, because we're taking all that pavement back that the farmer's market is at, we open up, obviously, that whole lot. But we understand we need to kind of come up with a plan for helping people understand where they can park and how that's going to change. So that's a great idea, and we'll look more into that.
Okay. Anybody have some more on everything up to the rail trail at this point? I did have another question, but.
You don't want to let them finish the rail trail?
Oh, I think that's going to be a subject of its own. I have another community and economic development
Sure.
question. Two, actually. One is, I'm excited about the demographic change, and you probably already done this, so I'm probably just singing to the choir, but the Affordable Housing Trust is now starting its revamp of the Affordable Housing Production Plan, and I'm certain they'll need that information to see how the demographics are changing in town, and it will dovetail with the work we have to do to resubmit to DHCD a new 5-year production plan. So I know who works in your office, so if you could work with Susan on that one.
Yep.
The other one, and it's not listed there, it's just the thought I had, is you may already have this. And if you do, I feel foolish for not knowing it. But do you have any kind of business outreach pamphlet or card or something that we could, I go to a lot of venues. And sometimes I talk to the owners, oh, we're looking to expand, we're looking to move around, oh, Danvers is a great, I could obviously say, please call,
Yeah.
you at the office.
Yeah.
I'd much rather give them a card or a pamphlet that encourages them, with a little more detail. Even if it's a card that points to a location on our website that says, Danvers is as an economic community, here's what you could do. And I'll say, drop my name. I mean, I go to a lot of places like Homebrews, which is an up-and-coming industry in the area, and they might be ripe for moving and expanding to Danvers. And I would want to point them to the right people who know the right properties that are available, and the right, try to get that synergy going.
So, yes, the short answer is yes, we're working on those materials. So
Okay.
we have a couple of different recruitment letters that, one targeting more small business. We're working on recruitment letters for big businesses and et cetera. We're also, I think we had at least talked about the pamphlet. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'd throw them in my car, and then if I was talking to a business owner in Salem who said he's looking to expand,
Yep.
I'd be happy to run out to my car and hand him one of these and say, drop my name.
Yep.
If I thought it was an establishment that should be in town.
I don't want to promise that we'll have that ready in like
No.
3 days, but we are working on that and
Okay.
we're plugging
So
away on
you
that.
didn't have one, so I'm not behind, and
No.
maybe you'll think about one.
Yep.
All right, great, thanks.
Mr.
So-
Chairman, I just had a thought. One of the things that Aaron was mentioning about access to the farmer's market, if you do it, we have an asset that the town purchased last year, the the wagon over at Endicott Park with a tractor. There'd nothing be any more appropriate than to take people or shuttle them from the parking lot here over to the library and back with that little trailer that we already have. I believe that there are certain leeways that you're allowed to go so far on a public way.
I was going to say, I was at risk of telling a bad joke. Wasn't there an issue about where the wagon could go and where it couldn't go?
That can always be changed.
No, it's a great idea. Great idea.
I mean, you wouldn't be competing with anyone necessarily, but you might be enhancing the farmer's market.
Yep.
I'm glad you're looking at changing that, because it just did not work the way it was the last 3 years.
Yeah, and I think Rotary came to that conclusion, so we're hoping, I think this change, I mean, most of the vendors just tell us it's about foot traffic, and by tying it closer to the concert, we're guaranteeing the foot traffic, so I'm hoping we see, you know, again, I don't think it'll take a season probably for people to believe us, but I'm hoping that we get the patronage and the foot traffic. So, we're
Kudos to
excited,
the
we think it's gonna
Rotary
work.
for hanging in there. They really, they have been a work in progress, so I think it's great. And crowds are a good thing. You know, not everybody can park at the front door. Crowds are a good thing, and walking's not a bad thing for you. I go back to the community. It's something, and Steve, I've had the great pleasure of going to visit some of these places, and I think Danvers has done an amazing job of bringing good jobs. Danvers is a working-class community. People are educated, they want a good job, and they don't want to travel into Boston anymore. So I really compliment the work you're doing to expand that and move forward and become partners with the businesses. They're not our enemies. They're good for us. The downtown, I have, you know, that I'm all excited about getting the downtown done, and so I have sat and talked to some of the businesses, and I'm a little surprised, because I'm always surprised how many people don't read newspapers. And so can we get a personal invitation out to each and every one of them? Maybe stop in every once in a while and see some of them, some of our bigger locations that will either sell or renovate to the specifications. We have some pretty big buildings down there, and we need them to be on board. So I would really like you to reach out to them or have us stop in, I don't care.
Yep.
The farmer's market, I just think that's a great idea. I never thought of moving them there, so I love the music, you know. I bumped into Bill in Swampscott, and it was down by the beach, and it was good, and from what I heard from people that live in Swampscott, it was not doing well where it was, and they moved it, you know, to this open land where people walked around. There's really not a lot of parking there either.
No.
And they seem to do pretty well, and it's
Almost double the business.
beautiful.
And we've had a few areas lose their markets. I think, I'm looking at Bill because I was wondering if he would know off the top of his head. I can't remember which communities markets have closed.
Middleton?
And so we are also reaching out to those vendors to try to just let them know that we're changing things up for 19 and hoping that they'd consider trying this.
I liked
And again, Wednesday afternoons, hopefully, again, is not the big markets on Saturday mornings and stuff like that. We're hoping we're not conflicting with them and that we can get some, broader array of vendors. So,
I just think it's a great idea. And I think it's great the Rotary's hanging in there.
yep, no, it's a great partnership.
Yeah.
I should also say, while I have it, Matt Schroeder, is that his, I forget, Matt Schroeder from Rotary's been
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Cheryl James from Recreation's been great, and
Bill
Jen
Nolan.
Breaker's also here in the town manager's office has been, leading the charge on this, so it's been great. It's been a good team effort. And Mr. Lent at the library volunteering his space, so we're excited. Okay, one last thing. Rail Trail Extension. So we have applied for a grant, $300,000, to continue the design work on the Middleton extension. We had a meeting, and I'm glad Mr. King's here. We met 2 Fridays ago with Mass Highway to go over some aspects of this in the right-of-way between 95 and Route 1 in particular. That's going to be probably the most difficult part of the trail. There are some engineering challenges on other aspects of that trail, to be sure, but they're all compounded there because we don't control that right-of-way, and we need a partnership in order to make that happen. And so we had a very positive meeting with them. And 2 of the people that we were meeting with that day are on the grant committee that will be looking at our application. I think it'll be a number of months before we hear from them. They were quite candid that they were overwhelmed. I think they said they had about 120 applicants across the state. And that I think we won't hear until like June, yeah. So they're gonna take it right up to the deadline. to get back to us, but I did want to share that with you because it was a pretty exciting meeting, and we're glad that we've applied. So I guess I should pull that apart a little bit. We were meeting with them to discuss that right-of-way in between the two highways for the ongoing design work that we have from town meeting last year, the $150,000 appropriation. And it just so happened that while we were there talking about the bigger project and the context, it came out that we had applied for the $300,000 trail grant. And so the kind of conversation kind of moved on, and but again, very, very positive feedback we got. So who knows what we'll get, but we're really excited, and I thought I'd share that with you while I had some FaceTime.
Thank you. Any questions or discussions on that topic?
I hope we get it.
Great, well, thank you very much for the updates.
No, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right. The board will hear from the town manager on various items of interest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My items are not nearly as exciting as land use and community services items. I have a short list of updates tonight. The first, you received this evening, actually, a copy of a letter from the MSBA, and I wanted to provide a quick update. This is something we'll be covering soon in our warrant review, but given that the MSBA letter was put out this week, I wanted to provide a quick update. Town meeting approved the Highlands roof replacement project at last year's town meeting. We were looking at that time at a $1.6 million project. The school was built in 1956, fully renovated in the mid-1990s. We've had a history with leaks and repair issues on that roof, and the conclusion last year was it was time to replace the roof. The project budget assumed that we would be replacing the entire membrane and making some minor repairs to the substrate on the roof. The MSBA approved that project and agreed to partner with the town. We were looking at an $800,000 local portion of the project. With the accelerated repair projects through MSBA, they assigned an OPM and a construction manager to partner with the community. Once the engineers were on the roof and started pulling it apart in preparation for design, they realized some of the portions hadn't been repaired in the mid-90s. They were original to the 1950s, and a lot of the damage had entered into the substrate. So we had to pause in the fall on the design for that project. We went back to the MSBA. They agreed to partner with the town, which is the letter that you see here, but we're going to be going back to town meeting and asking to authorize what's now a $3.2 million project. So in conversations with the MSBA and with the design team, you know, we had the right number for the wrong project last year. In order to do this project right, they're going to have to rebuild a lot of the substrate on that roof. So it doubles the size, but this is going to be doing the project the right way. DPW's been chasing down leaks on that roof for a long time, and so this is essentially rebuilding the roof from the top of the building up, which should ensure another 25 to 30 year roof before we have to start thinking about replacing the membrane again. We went through this a couple years ago with the fire station, where you can only resurface these roofs so many times before you have to strip it down and start over again. And so we're about a month away from warrant review, but because this letter, we received it this week, I wanted to provide a quick update to the board on that. So we'll have that covered in much greater detail in our warrant explanation, but that's the letter that you received this evening. And if there are any questions on that particular project, I can attempt to answer those before I move on.
Steve, I'm sorry.
One of the questions, I'm sorry, Dan, one of the questions I think you're gonna need to address when we do the warrant is when the renovation was, why wasn't it addressed then, and all of that. I think that's gonna come up as to,
Yeah, and I think we'll cover that. I mean, 1993 was 25 years ago.
Yep.
So that we got 25 years out of this roof. And what I think caught the design team by surprise is that when they got up there and started designing the system, they realized that some of the portions were original from 1956. So when we did the renovations 25 years ago, we went right over top of some of the original roof areas. And so once they started to pull things apart, they found that a lot of the substrate was compromised, and it wouldn't have made sense to put a new membrane over faulty substructure. So
it's just gonna be a question that
Yep.
need to be addressed.
that's a good question.
Gardner Farm. Sure. So, my comment would be, we really didn't get 25 years out of the roof because it's been leaking forever.
Well, not forever. I don't want to
Well-
paint too dire of a picture, but I think the point is by last year, Public Works was making a strong recommendation that it was time to pursue.
I think it leaked when I was in the school committee. It was 20 years ago.
And I think part of the answer to that may be the fact that when the renovation project was done in the mid-90s, it was a sort of a patch then.
So I'm reading this second paragraph, last sentence, the final grant amount may be an amount less than 1.5 million. So what are you expecting?
Well, that's similar to the conversation we just had on the Smith School. If the bids come in, they won't give us the full amount if it costs less than the full amount?
But we're applying for the 1.5.
That's right.
Okay. I just,
right.
I heard you say 800, so,
So we would have, we
Original.
were anticipating the town contributing $800,000 toward a $1.6 million project. Instead, it'll be $1.6 million toward a $3.2 million project.
thank you.
Yeah. I'll move on to the next item. You received in your packets an overview of our March 9th budget workshop, and you should have received this evening a schedule for the Finance Committee's review. And at the bottom of the page, we put on the calendar, based on last year's warrant review, what the review for the selectmen would look like this year. So the chair of the Finance Committee has confirmed these dates from April 8th down through the 27th with the committee. And in years past, the board assigned attendance at these meetings. And then happy to have a conversation about the 16th and the 17th as potential warrant review evenings for the board.
Let's start with the selectmen dates on Tuesday, April 16th, and Wednesday, the 17th. I just want to confirm, obviously, Tuesday, the 16th is a normal meeting for us. I just want to make sure there's enough of us at 17th, if necessary, to have a quorum.
I'm here.
I'll be here.
Are you here, 17?
I'll have to,
I think so.
I'll have to miss Affordable Housing Trust, but that's okay. Pick and choose. And then when it comes to the Finance Committee, on Saturday, I'll take a couple of minutes that Saturday that we have our meeting to ask people what their calendars are looking like for FinCom meetings coverage.
And in years past, FinCom has not used the Saturday. That's been reserved for any overflow, and we've been able to complete the warrant. So I would anticipate the same this year.
So
it'll be
maybe
the week-
people start thinking about the 5 meetings that are common and pick one if they,
I'm just going to ask that I don't do the 8th, the 10th, or the 11th.
that's fine.
And I'll beg off of those dates as well.
I'll take the 11th if you want to put it right
All
down
right, well, let's
now.
do it now, okay. Bill will be the 11th,
23rd's good for me.
Diane's 23rd,
I just wanted to make
So
sure.
I'll take the 25th.
25th, Dan for the 25th. I'll take the, Mr. Mills, are you available the 8th or the 10th?
I think I'm just plugging in April 17th and promised to be here. So hold on a minute.
All right.
God, what did you ask again?
Are you available the 10th?
Of which month?
April 10th, to represent the selectmen at the FinCom. It'll be the library, the school, vocational school, and public works.
April 10th, which is a Wednesday. Right?
Yes,
What time?
7 o'clock.
I can't wait. I'll have bells on.
All right. David will be the 10th, and I will be the 8th.
Great.
Well, that was done. Easy. I'll cover if necessary, I'll cover the Saturday that if it goes into the other one.
Perfect. While we're on the subject of budget, a couple of quick updates related to the state's budget. So the governor's budget is out. There's been after a really strong year last year in FY18, state has seen some softening in their receipts early in FY19. But the governor's budget, which is generally the budget that we build our local budget on, had some nice surprises for the town. The unassigned general government aid, as in the last couple of years, is projected to be up 2.7%, which is around $80,000, and that's based on the state's receipts projecting out. Chapter 70, which is our school funding, is projected to go up 3.16% in the proposed budget, which is around $216,000. in additional revenue. Chapter 90 funding is flat. The governor's proposing $200 million, as has been the case for many years. The MMA continues to push for a $300 million Chapter 90 appropriation for roads. In a survey this past winter, MMA asked all of its, the towns and cities to determine what their need was for road work, and they came up with a number of roughly $685 million. So $200 million does not come close to keeping our critical infrastructure in good repair, but we'll continue to press for that. This was a good year for us to see these increases because this is the year we're receiving our last of the MSBA reimbursements under the prior funding model, which goes back to the 90s. We received our last $212,000 in reimbursement last year. So FY20 will be the first year where we're fully switched over to the new model. So that the increases I described more than offset the MSBA's reduction. So we're going to see about a 1% increase in our local aid. So without the increases in Chapter 70 or UGA, we would have actually seen the number go down this year. And the MSBA reimbursement, of course, is tied directly to actual debt service. So there was a decline in debt service that offset most of the MSBA funding, but it's still nice in the budget to see that it's not a negative, that it's a positive number with respect to the year over year from the state. The fourth item I'd like to talk about just for a minute, you received a memo in your materials on Friday from our Chief Assessor, Steve Poulos. Selectman Bennett had inquired prior to the holidays about, it had been a couple of years since we talked about either the elderly exemption or the senior work-off program here in Danvers. So I asked Steve to research both of those and lay out for the board what options are available if the board decided to recommend changes to either of those programs. So just quickly, the first of the two programs, Chapter 59, Section 5K, the Senior Work-Off Program. This allows residents who are 60 or older and meet income limits to volunteer for the town for up to a $500 abatement on their taxes. We do have the local authority to increase the abatement and also broaden the income pool. So we could reduce, or we could increase the income thresholds. We could also increase the abatement that people are eligible to work off. The program is tied to the state's minimum wage, so it would increase, if we were to increase to a maximum of $1,500 per abatement, it would be tripling the benefit, but it would also triple the number of hours that the senior would have to work to earn that full benefit.
You've got to increase your minimum wage, though. Your minimum wage is a year late. It's $12 now,
Yep.
not 11.
And he was looking at, I'll make that note, we were looking at FY18 for the program totals and then the current year for that. But, so there's room to work with there if the board wanted to recommend something like that. On the backside.
Steve, before you leave that, as a practical matter, what kind of work can a senior do to make that work,
So, yeah, a lot of our departments, assessing has used seniors for this kind of work. I know Joe's office has worked, and he can describe a little bit of what goes on in administrative services.
We generally use the senior work-off people for our switchboard receptionists out in the front lobby of Town Hall. They are staffed by 2 part-timers on our full-time work week, and what it allows us to do is to take the part-timer that would work from 8 to 12 or 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 to relieve them of their duties outside in the reception area and come in and work as beneficial staff waiting on the counter, et cetera, in the town clerk's office. That is auto covered when someone is out on vacation. So we've effectively used them for a number of years, and it's been a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned.
We have opportunity in the building department. There's filing that could be done. Mr. Poulos actually tried an interesting project a couple of years ago. It turned out that it didn't work, but it was a failure for all the right reasons. We have to do a lot of with our assessing department. You need street images of the houses in town. So he came up with the idea of having seniors. It was a combination of tax work off and an active lifestyle. And he was having seniors go to neighborhoods with tablets and take take the street shots of buildings so that we could load that into our system. The problem was the images, the image names that were generated were they were gibberish. So it took about 3 times as long to code which picture went with which file in the system. But I think the seniors really enjoyed that particular opportunity to go walk the streets with a tablet or smartphone and do something like that. But we're very creative in terms of thinking about how the folks who apply can do this kind of work.
It's not sweeping floors or doing dishes. Okay. Dignified, fun.
I agree, yes. And on the backside, there's a description of 41C, which is the elderly exemption. One of the questions from December, which we've confirmed that at 65 years, we've already reduced, that's the lowest age by law that you can make the benefit available to, but we do have an opportunity to increase our benefit. The state threshold is $1,000 in terms of an abatement. The town did adopt many years ago, increasing that abatement to $1,500, and there's an additional $500 that the town could locally adopt for a maximum benefit of $2,000. So in this regard, both the income and the age are set by the state, but we do have an opportunity to increase the benefit, or recommending that town meeting adopt an increase in the benefit. And as you'll note, this is not, the way that the statute reads, this is not an automatic year over year, it gets phased in. So we're still phasing in some of our recent participants into the $1,500 exemption. So over time, this would redistribute roughly $40,000 based on our current numbers across the tax levy if the town adopted to go to the maximum of $2,000. Both of these changes would require town meeting approval, and if that's something the board wanted to look at, staff's prepared to draft the language necessary to do so. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions I can.
I would like to look at that.
Doubling the amount?
Yes.
It'd be 50, we'd go from 1,500 to, we're already at 1,500, so it'd be a
Yep.
50% increase in the 33%.
The appetite of the other members?
Well, by all means, we should look at the language
Sure.
and discuss it.
All right.
Yeah, we could, so what we would propose to do then is draft 2 warrant articles that we would review during the selectmen's warrant review. We can discuss it then, and if the desire is to move it on, that would be the will of the board.
Great.
Well, the last update I wanted to provide, you received a copy of a letter of support from my office. The town's been pretty successful in receiving IT-related grants from the state. We've used those grants to extend the fiber network that the town is already building to some of our neighbors. We've had, some of that effort has borne immediate fruit. The town of Essex has contracted with the town of Danvers for us to provide off-site backup for them, as well as sort of piloting some consulting services to support them. The grant letter that I provided tonight, Danvers is sort of uniquely positioned. We have a pretty strong IT department, in part because we have an electric division with a very complex IT infrastructure. We're in the process, as I've reported to this board, of combining our IT function with the schools. They have a lot of expertise on their side that really sort of supplements the expertise we have on our side. And the superintendent and assistant superintendents are very open to that merger. So, we have neighbors, Middleton, Topsfield, Wenham, Hamilton, Manchester by the Sea, that really don't have any IT staff on site. And as we continue to develop the model here in Danvers for how we can support the schools and the library in addition to all the town departments, we're very open to exploring ways to support some of those municipalities through intermunicipal agreements that would be revenue generating for the town and leverage some of the investments we've already made, like our data center over at Borough Street. So much of the work that this grant would do has already been done in Danvers, but this grant that we've partnered on with the other towns would essentially bring consulting services to each of those communities to do an inventory of their software, hardware, infrastructure, status and then offer some recommendations in terms of what sort of investments they would need to make to position themselves to be supported by the town. So, we hired our IT director and our assistant IT director both came to us with experience in regional IT, and I think we've sort of scratched the surface of a real need on the North Shore, which is to support the small communities who don't have the expertise. And I think there's a synergy here where we could actually reduce our costs to provide the service we need and offer a benefit to our peers. So this is one I'm excited to report on. And the grant would be the request is for $80,000, which would get consultants on the ground in each of those 5 communities to really create that inventory and also develop some recommendations in terms of how we as a region might start to partner.
Great. Is there any more questions or comments on the town manager's items of interest? All right, then. The board will consider the consent calendar as they appear on the, below.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. It's now time for the correspondence, selectmen new business, previous business updates, and closing comments. I will start with Mr. Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was approached by a person in town who has in the past been very active in trying to promote bicycle safety in town and rail trail and bike lanes, and I think that this complete streets policy program will answer her requests and interests that she expressed to me. She might have written to other people, I don't know, but I got her, and I responded to her, which I don't usually do in emails, but I felt that it was appropriate because I've worked with a person for a number of years in the
Town
past.
meeting member.
What?
She's a town meeting member, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, she is, yeah.
Thank you. Any other
That's it.
updates,
That's it.
comments? Mr. Mills?
I mean, final comments?
Yes.
I have none. This is not my final meeting. Thank you.
Selectman Langley?
Really are off tonight. I really have nothing. I did also get that email. It would be nice if, with where we have subcommittees, had that maybe gone to the Rail Trail Committee. They are a diligent group that have been working very hard, and they have been, these things have been discussed at their meetings. I did not respond. I've been a little busy, but I also saw this on our agenda. So, one of the things I wish we did a little more of is not interfering with some of our committees. As each of us sit on something, that we allow these things to go through to our committees who are our advisors and utilize them correctly. So, just my opinion.
Sure.
Thank you.
I would say that I took her email to be broader in nature than just rail trail, to include our city streets.
Yep.
Or the town streets, obviously, sidewalks. While yes, it could have gone to rail trail, but I think that would have been limiting her scope. So, but, point taken. I actually have nothing under new business or public comments, so I'll turn it over to Selectman Bennett.
Just curious, Bill reached out, or did you by chance
did
as
not.
chair? No?
No, and the reason being is I think I was included with a couple of people and defer to the town manager when that happens.
So you said
If there is
the town
more than,
manager.
right, if
Okay.
there is more than
Well,
one
just-
selectman,
I want to make sure she was responded to.
And I was the only name in
no,
mine.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm saying my personal follow-through is if there's more than one selectman, then I make sure I ask the town manager to respond on behalf of the
All
town.
right, thank you.
I don't want to get into the open meeting law diciness.
No, that just, I think she deserves a response.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you. Last town meeting, we passed a plastic bag ban to take effect in June. June is coming up very quickly. It'll be 1 month after our election, as a matter of fact. I'd like to find a way to encourage our consumers to support our local businesses and bring reusable, recyclable bags when they shop. So I've kind of asked the town manager if he could work on that project with his staff. sooner rather than later, because June will be here. I know we have a method to penalize the businesses, but I hate to get into that. And hopefully they'll volunteer on their own. Still a lot of big box stores giving out plastic bags that you can't even get to your car with before they rip. So hopefully Steve will come back to us in the near future.
Thank you.
And that's everything?
That's it, you're the
All right,
last.
wonderful. So at this point in time, I'd like everybody to remember the veterans, current veterans, former veterans, and veterans to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Good night, Danvers, thank you.